And we've had some great sessions, Zach and Mark. I was in an earlier how many were in the earlier session by Daniel and the Jacobs over there? So I'm going to be sharing some similar things, but share more from my personal experience and try to relate it to your experience. But the title of my time is 5 Steps to Teacher Presence in Online Learning. You may be at steps 8 to 15, I may still be stuck at 5, and that's okay. I want to ask the question, how many have taught a global course or online course? Okay, good. And so teaching online, there's some benefits of it, because on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. You can do it in your t-shirt, right? It's a danger to it for students. It's a danger to students and a benefit. It's a benefit they're anonymous in terms of if they're introvert, they're more engaged, right? But in terms of the flexibility, all kind of benefits as you've learned. But just one point that there's no more traditional courses anymore, as I've sensed. That we've all moved to web enhanced. So even our traditional courses are web enhanced, as you were saying, Mark, and you've shown us brilliantly. And then Zach, as you were saying, in terms of integration. So we've all kind of moved to this space right here. I'm working in professional and graduate studies, or graduate studies in the business school, and almost 100% of our courses are online. But our goal and my task is to take them into the blended space, so there's a lot more interactivity, right? So a lot of us at LeTourneau are moving from here to here. I'm moving the graduate studies from here to here. And hopefully we'll all meet in the middle in 5 years. We won't have any difference between face-to-face and online, the way in which we teach, the way we learn, the way we become a community of shalom and hesed and all the rest. So my focus here is how can you deliver and work in the blended online space. So it's both and. The first thing I want to just establish, to put in your feather cap, is to get you acquainted with the term community of inquiry if you're not already. This has been a big movement in higher education, particularly educational research. And my wife has kind of put me into this because she's getting her PhD in higher education. But for the last 20 years, there's been a community of inquiry framework being developed. And I'll show you some of the research literature just briefly. But it's based on this premise that the purpose of education is inquiry, right? Is critical reflection, is critical reasoning. And so Lippmann says the importance of community of inquiry, that is while the objective of critical reflection is intellectual autonomy, individual, in reality, critical reflection is thoroughly social and communal. And so how do we, particularly in the online space, in the blended space, in the hybrid space, how do we create that kind of community which inquires personally and collectively? So let me share with you here the Community of Inquiry Framework, which is put out probably in the late 90s. The classic was Garrison. And I forgot to mention that the slides today are online in PDF. It's at my website, jgary, all one word, .com /5 steps.pdf. 5steps.pdf at jgary.com. And you can get all these slides. But you can also go to SlideShare and type in Garrison Community of Inquiry, and there's hundreds of slideshows there on the Community of Inquiry model. But it's basically built on these 3 premises. You have a teaching presence, that's us as faculty, right? You have social presence, that's student or participant to participant. It can be student to student, it can be student to social network, student to the world, student to service. And then it's cognitive presence, that's the inquiry, what their takeaway, the learning outcome. And so up until now, we've just had a very small way of measuring outcomes, and we do it by cognitive, psychomotor, affective, outcomes. The model of Garrison was trying to broaden this to understand learning as a systemic, framework. Then how do we assess it and how do we improve it institutionally, how would we improve it in terms of faculty relating to students, okay? So functionally, let me walk the dog here with you a little bit, and then we have a little discussion, and I'll share a few more tips. But teaching presence, design, facilitation, direction of cognitive, social processes for the purpose of realizing personal, meaningful outcomes. So the elements are design, organization, facilitation, direct instruction, okay? So this is what the teacher does to set the climate and to regulate the learning. A lot of this is design up front. Some of it's delivery, all right, in course. But a lot of it is what our CDT does, design up front, we do with them. That's teaching presence, right? Social presence, the ability of participants in a community of inquiry, even online, to project themselves socially and emotionally as real people, their full personality through the medium of communication being used. Well, that's easy if we're in a direct, live theater class, but how do you do it in an online virtual environment? And how do you cultivate that? And then 3, cognitive presence, the extent to which learners are able to construct and confirm meaning or measurement, technical measurement, through sustained reflection and discourse in a critical community of inquiry. And so, let me pull your attention to design and organization. Those of you who've taught online class, how have you differed from your on-ground class, traditional classes, and your global classes in doing teacher presence, particularly in design and organization, facilitation, or instruction? How have you changed? Just let me kick some comments here. Yeah.
Normally, as far as design and organization, in the class, typically I send them an email when I've forgotten something in class. Right. But email or announcement becomes my typical mode of communication.
Okay. All right. The communication through email and sometimes anterior on the posterior. Right. So, other thoughts? More indirect, mediated through technology, correct?
I've never really taught a synchronous class online.
Synchronous, it's asynchronous, right? It's different times coming in and out, right? Very good, very good. Oscar, thoughts? Okay.
Last week, go ahead.
Yeah.
Email
Correct, email and communication that way. And Mark?
I was going to comment last week. I had never done it before, but something came up in class, and I said, I'll put together a video for you, and I did a real quick Panopto video of the problem that they were encountering.
Okay.
Send
All
it
right.
out, attached to an announcement,
Okay.
and copied to all their emails, and he said it was very helpful.
Fantastic. Just-in-time learning through mediated instruction attached to an email or linked to YouTube or linked to Panopto Media. All right, let's go over here. Social presence, affective expression, open communication, group cohesion. How is that done in a virtual environment? Yes? Yes?
You actually create assignments and you create content that requires the students to interact with the instructor and to interact with
Interact with each other, correct. Interact with each other. Students interact with their social networks, give a poll of others, have a survey, do a teaching, whatever. Work with others in the groups, virtually. So there's a number of ways in which you can activate people socially, student to student, so you overcome the biggest problem of online learning is alienation, isolation. I'm all alone. And the people are afraid to write an email to the professor, much less a colleague, right? So you design instruction up front through teacher presence to carry out social presence, or to create social, these are ends in Garrison's framework, community of inquiry framework. And then cognitive presence. One thing I really enjoyed when you were talking, Zach, was you talked about kind of closing the loop, and you saw you were running the three words of Hesed and all the way down to Shalom through a course, and you wanted to close it at the end to say, how can we apply it, how can we work that out and take it to others, not just ourselves. That's a big part of cognitive presence. The triggering event, the exploration, integration, resolution. I had to minimize or downscale my inline teaching from content dumping, multiple triggers, to more exploration, and then zeroing in to close this loop of integration and resolution. So how do we do that for students? We do that in dialogue, right? We do that in feedback on grades. We've heard, throughout the day how we do that. Close the learning, help students close this loop of practical inquiry. This is called the practical inquiry model of cognitive present, Bill and Dewey and others in the community of inquiry framework. So I encourage you with a community of framework. Okay, let's see. Click the what?
Where your index finger is right now?
Yeah. Squeeze the mouse.
And where your index finger is, there's a trigger.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Oh, no, that didn't do it.
Okay, well. Dale, come on up and you show me how the, I'm going to. Uh-huh. Okay, well, let's get it back in now. We'll get it to, come on down. We'll get it back. All right.
Got to be on that. It's not, it's really not. Even like, there we go. So
Okay.
you're good. Just click.
All right. Long story short, Garrison has developed validated assessments through factor analysis to help us as program directors, deans, whatever it is, assess effectiveness of instruction and effectiveness of the community of inquiry through the three presences, and I'll let you find that in the literature. But the biggest problem, I've taught online learning for 10 years, largely doctoral students and some masters. But the biggest problem I found with my adjuncts and myself when I'm traveling, overstressed, AWOL, right? The course runs itself. And fortunately, I design a lot of social presence activities. I don't try to dominate discussion anyway. I try to spark it. The courses can run themselves, but we need more presence in the courses. And so let me share with you, just in closing here, 5 steps to teacher presence, all right? And some of these I think you're already unconsciously doing or asked to do, right? And the first 2 are no-brainers in terms of Blackboard announcements. Here's a course I taught at my previous institution, and the announcements were showing up in this course, in the main marquee. But I do a lot of announcements. I taught a course this past year at University of Dakota and called Contemporary Futures Thought. And I do a lot of announcements that are YouTube, audioed, textbook visualize, links, announcements that are enrichment, that are what I might throw in other resources, I'll throw into an announcement. So under content, I only put what's required, but under announcements, I'll do enrichment. I separate that out. And so people know these are optional, and I mark them optional, right? So announcements to status people, email welcomes, of course, to each period or unit or week. Very effective. Lead post or prompts, I think. Our faculty guides, we write those in our faculty guides, right? How to start discussion. But I don't want a student entering discussion with a blank marquee. I want to see my presence there before it starts. So what I started to do is keep a record of those lead prompts in my folders for courses. So I'm doing 4 courses, let's say, one semester online. Boom, I just start, one night I do it in 5 minutes. I get all my lead posts done. I click. So, or again, sometimes I'll back up, email welcomes. So 4, and this is probably just the most important. Last two I've discovered the last 3 or 4 years, and they've totally transformed the learning outcomes of my graduate students. I call it just screencasts or previews. If I'm starting a week, I do a preview. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes. But I do, in a sense, a YouTube, but it's an audio PowerPoint. I call it a screencast, right? But it could be a panopto, something you record. How you record it's not as important as doing it and archiving it. So number 4 is archive. Number 5 is live. Okay, and I'll make more comments on 5, but let me talk about screencast previews. How many have used Camtasia? It's a great investment in academic excellence as in creating software. It's a $400, $200, or $250 investment, but it's well worth it. Short of that, we have tools like Panopto. We have tools like, this is a tool I'll talk more about, called Screencast-O-Matic.com. You can record a PowerPoint just on your screen with a little green light, and it records it to the cloud. You can download your MP3 or upload it automatically to YouTube. And it's fantastic. I can't say enough about it. So Camtasia, even YouTube has an inbuilt software that you can create through MP3s or JPEGs. You can create PowerPoints and things like that. Yeah. Camtasia, there's a free version. Yes. It's not the full. Correct. So it's.
You can also get the package which has Camtasia and Snagit and Doceri for about $200.
I use Snagit every day, and then Camtasia I use every week, regularly. But the Screencast-O-Matic is a good substitute, and you can download it to a Mac or an IBM, a recording program, and you push a button, you record it on your machine, it saves your machine, you upload it to YouTube. Fantastic software. I got doing this so much this past year at this course in South Dakota online I was doing, I had students do the final project, do a YouTube, using Screencast-O-Matic. So I had them create slides, whatever slides, record them as they talk through them, upload the MP3 to YouTube, and I briefed them on the assignment that way, and had great success. Students are naturals at this in their social network. So here with the slides you download, I'll give you the URL of this presentation at the end. You can see the kind of previews I do to start a week or a unit, that type of thing. And then let me just talk about live webinars. The principle of online learning is asynchronous, right? So how do you do a live webinar if people aren't required to be there? Well, you do a live webinar, then you archive it, all right? And you do it in an interactive fashion. So here's, for example, I had done in residency scenario planning for an 8-hour workshop or 6-hour workshop for 5 years. 2 years ago, I was asked to do it online with an online audience of 15 for a course. Well, I fired up Adobe Connect. I got a friend of mine from Palm Springs, a former student at TA. We're chatting. We had 15 people in the room. I have a file download area. I have web links here for the next 4 hours. We had a fantastic scenario workshop, interactive workshop, where they were using the whiteboard. They were using, I was polling them, had structured polls. We were creating together. And I would say I was 80% effective at what I would normally do in a 6-hour face-to-face with that 4-hour online workshop. And I later made the archives instantly available, for the folks. Now I'm doing those archives are less effective than in terms of actively there, but it's highly viable to learn how to do live webinars that engage people, pull people right into your presence. So here's a student that says, "Thank you for your guidance and support this semester. It added a great helpful layer. The WIMBA sessions were wonderful. It was a great resource to be able to go back in middle working on a project. I'm excited about what's ahead." They felt engaged. My ratings went up. Everybody was happy. Okay. So there you are. 5 steps to teacher presence, and particularly 4 and 5 if you haven't. Develop competencies in that. How many have posted something to YouTube? All right, good. How many have done live webinars with students? All right. So fire it up and let's rock it, because people want to be engaged with others. And even have students come in and I have students come in and do teaching live, teaching each other in the classroom, even in online, from multiple countries this past, South Africa, on this past summer. So good to be with you. Again, that URL is jgary.com/5steps.pdf. All right. Thank you very much.